Hello, my name is Matt, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about a new video series we're offering on Google Analytics 4. Today's talk is going to be led by two Google Analytics product managers. You'll hear from my colleague Stefano, as well as from myself. Today's session is the first in a series of talks led by Google Analytics product managers. The product managers work directly with the engineers who build the product, so this is your chance to hear about Google Analytics directly from the source. Our goal is to help you get started using Google Analytics 4 for your web and app measurement needs. We'll take you from basic Google Analytics 4 property setup all the way through using Google Analytics 4 to achieve your business objectives. We're going to explain various parts of the product. Each talk is going to be led by the relevant product manager who helped design that section. We'll take you through theoretical and practical examples. And we're also going to give you live demos of the product so you can understand deeply how Google Analytics works. Before we jump in, I have two more callouts to make. First, if you've never used Google Analytics 4 before, search for the Google Analytics 4 demo property. This will take you to a sample property that we've made accessible to everybody, and it's on the Google Merchandise Store. This is a real website and a real property made to measure it that you can take a look at. And this will help you get acquainted with Google Analytics 4 and how it should look and work once it's set up properly. Secondly, if you have any questions at any time, go take a look at our Help Center. We have a lot of rich information there about every feature in Google Analytics. And if you're a Google Analytics 360 customer, you'll have a dedicated point of contact that you can reach out to anytime with questions you have. For today's session, it's going to be led in two parts. First, I will walk you through the Google Analytics 4 migration from Universal Analytics. I'll tell you all about how to set up a basic Google Analytics 4 property and walk you through a series of tools that we've launched to make this process easier. In the second part, Stefano is going to walk you through Google Analytics 4 reporting. He'll take you through standard reporting as well as the Explore section. And both of us are going to use rich demos all along the way so you can deeply understand how to use Google Analytics 4. Next, I'm going to walk you through how to set up a Google Analytics 4 property. I'm going to walk you through the most common steps that users go through. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it will cover all the basics, and oftentimes it's enough to get customers started with Google Analytics 4 properties. We'll be walking through all 12 of the steps that you see on screen here. We're also going to discuss how you can migrate from a Universal Analytics property to a Google Analytics 4 property. To do this, we recommend you do what we call dual setup. This is where you're going to run two properties at the same time, one from Universal Analytics and the second from Google Analytics 4. This allows you to start data collection early in your Google Analytics 4 property. You can still use your Universal Analytics property as it will still be functioning all the while. And you can configure your new GA4 property immediately. And that's helpful so you can get used to the new Google Analytics 4 property and even start training your teams on it. And when you're ready, you can start migrating users from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4. One of the first things you're going to want to consider as you're setting up a Google Analytics 4 property is the Google Analytics Account Structure. Accounts are the top-level object that we have in the hierarchy inside of Google Analytics, and they house all of your properties from both Universal Analytics and Google Analytics 4. They have basic account settings on them, like users and their permissions, as well as a change history. The main object within an account is the property. Now, the idea behind a property is this is the object that maps to your website or your app, or both, that you're trying to measure. Oftentimes, this will also map to a brand, and usually a team of people working together to measure that brand. Inside of Universal Analytics, underneath the property, we had what we called views. Views were the object to help give you a slice of the data that's collected within the property. In Google Analytics 4, we have a couple of equivalents. For 360 customers, we have an object called a subproperty, which functions very much like a Universal Analytics view did. For standard customers, you can use various report customizations to try to achieve similar results. You can use things like filters inside of a report, or custom explorations. There are a handful of considerations to keep in mind as you're setting up a Google Analytics account. The first is that the maximum that you can hold is 100 properties inside of that account. So if you're working with many properties, you'll likely want to group them by brand and/or team. Now, if you're working with many brands and many teams of people, you might want to have multiple Google Analytics accounts. And each one of those could be for distinct groups and brands that you're working with. And remember, in a Google Analytics 4 property, you're measuring both websites and apps, so be sure to consider the needs of both of those as you're creating your structure. Now, make sure that your structure, your account, and your properties are going to map very well to your business needs. There are many possible ways to configure this, and there's no one right or wrong answer. Simply consider your teams, your assets and brands, and as well as your company's needs. Let's walk through a few examples of what might make for a good account and property structure. For a small business that's measuring a single website or a single app, you probably are going to be fine with just a single Google Analytics account and property. Now, if you have many brands and potentially many teams working on those brands, you can still work within a single account as long as you have enough room for all the properties that you need. And if you have a single company with many very closely related brands and teams of people working on them, a single property could even work for all of those. So again, these are all possible configurations, but definitely consider your business needs and when trying to decide the right structure for you. Next, we're going to do a live demo of Google Analytics. The first task we're going to be going up against is creating a new GA4 property. This is done by going to analytics.google.com in a browser, just like you're seeing here. And you're welcome to follow along while you're watching this video. What you'll also notice is that I already have a Google Analytics account in place and created. If you don't, simply go into the site. We'll walk you through how to create your first one. All right, there are a couple of methods that we're going to show you as to how to create a new property. The first is by logging into your Universal Analytics property and looking at the very top of the screen. Note the blue bar that reminds you about Universal Analytics' sunset, and it also has a blue button off to the right to get started with creating a property. Let's click the button. Now we go into the Setup Assistant, which tells you a bit more about creating new GA4 properties. We have a wizard to make this very easy. Click Get Started to use it. We now explain to you how this wizard works, and essentially it's copying some basic settings over from your Universal Analytics property. And very importantly, if your website is already tagged with a global site tag, that's the gtag.js library, we're going to reuse that and configure your new property automatically for you to receive website data. No retagging or no tag edits required. Let's click the button to continue. Great, and now our property is created. Click once more and to see your new GA4 property. And a new window opens up here. Excellent, now we're all set. There's a second method for creating a new property, and that lives inside of the GA admin section. Let's go to the main page for Google Analytics admin and click the button up top here for creating a property. We're first going to input some very basic settings like a property name, setting a time zone and a currency. Once that looks right, let's continue and enter a little bit of information about our business. And once more, click to create. And now we're all set with property creation. If you use the Setup Assistant wizard, we automatically created what we call a data stream for you. If you manually created your property, we didn't. And so you land on this screen that you can see right here, which is asking you to start creating a data stream. A data stream is an object in Google Analytics 4 that's designed to help model the flow of data from your website or your app into Google Analytics. So you'll need to set up some data streams, and 1 to 3 depending on what you're trying to measure. If you're just measuring a website, you'll simply need a web stream, or if you're just measuring an app, create the appropriate app stream, or it could be all 2 or 3 of these, depending on your needs. Let's go ahead into the web stream, and here it's going to ask you some very basic information to set up a new web stream. And so you'll enter your URL and your stream name, and you'll see a little bit of information here about enhanced measurement. The powerful new feature is to automatically give you rich information in your new GA4 property. Click once more to create the stream. And now you're all set. You have a web stream that's created, and here's some detail about it. And note, there's a whole bunch of rich information here about how to use your new stream and to tag your site appropriately so that way the GA4 property can receive data. We have specific instructions if you're using Google Tag Manager or a content management system, or if you're already on a global site tag and how to reuse that. Note, we're going to have a deep dive video into data collection, and so it's going to go into great detail on all of these options. So stay tuned and come back and watch that one if you're interested. And similarly, if you're interested in app measurement, you can create an app stream, and the wizard will walk you through all the steps required to get that going. And again, watch that follow-up video on data collection to see in depth how this works. Next, we're going to walk through a couple of advertising features that we have. The first is a feature called Google Signals. Google Signals is a powerful tool to allow you to get richer information shared between your Google Analytics property and your Google Ads accounts. To find this feature, log into Google Analytics Admin, look under the Data Settings, Data Collection area, and then at the very top you'll see a section here for Google Signals. First, we explain to you a bit about the feature, and once you're ready to proceed, go ahead and click to get started. And we walk you through some of the powerful features that can be enabled by turning on Google Signals. Things like richer remarketing lists and being able to share better remarketing back and forth between ads and analytics. It's an incredibly powerful feature for anyone who wants to target ads to very specific audiences that you have on your website, say Gold Star members or shopping cart users who got to your shopping cart. And also some of the reports that we have in analytics will be enhanced once Google Signals is activated. Reports like advertising, demographics and interests, and cross-device reports all will be improved. Once you're ready to move on, go ahead and click to continue. And here we're going to explain a bit more deeply about how Google Signals works and the types of data that it keys off of. It also does call for a potential review to your advertising policies, so make sure to read this carefully and your own advertising policies to make sure this all is going to work for you. Once you're ready to proceed, and this does look like it's going to be a good feature for you, click the button to activate, and you're all set. Next, I'm going to walk you through how you're going to link your analytics properties to Google Ads. And linking is a very important step, as that's the foundation for sharing data between ads and analytics. This all starts by loading up Google Analytics Admin again, and you can go into the Setup Assistant and scroll down to the Google Ads linking section. Here, you're able to import ads links from Universal Analytics. So if your Universal Analytics property was linked to a few Google Ads accounts, here in this example 4, you're able to just copy those right on over to GA4. It's incredibly powerful, as this is a 1 or 2 click wizard to get those links created. And very importantly, we only have to be an analytics administrator to use this tool. Normally, you have to be what we call a dual admin, an administrator in both ads and analytics to set up a link. But here, since your Universal Analytics property was already linked to ads, we allow you to copy it over just with analytics credentials. Once you review the list of ads accounts you want to copy over, maybe customize it. You can also take a look at the ads personalization and turn that on or off as needed. And once the settings look right, click once more. And here's a reminder of some of the other things you may want to do to get the most out of your ads and analytics links. Click to import, and you're all set. The second way to create a link to Google Ads is again you can find it from the Setup Assistant under the same menu. And here you can manage Google Ads links. And here you can create them by clicking the blue button and selecting a Google Ads account you want to link to. Let's go with Acme Sunglasses. Confirm that. And once again, we have the personalized advertising setting. This is very helpful for remarketing lists and sharing your audiences from GA4 over to Google Ads. So we'll leave that on. And also auto tagging. It's a feature that we enable for you that automatically allows more data to flow easily between Google Ads and analytics. So we'll simply leave that alone, and that will turn that on. Click the button to proceed. Here we're going to review the settings that we just input and click Submit to save it. confirmed. You can see the link was created. Great. Now we return to the main menu, and we can actually see the 2 Google Ads links that we created through the import wizard, as well as the one that we just created manually. Next, we're going to talk about measuring custom events inside of Google Analytics. To start, I've loaded up the developer site that we have for Google Analytics. You can reach this by going to developers.google.com/analytics, and then you'll see what I have here on screen. When you take a look at this page, there's a lot of information here about how to measure events and measure websites and measure apps. So you can see here, and great guides here for setting up analytics, etc. As you scroll down a little bit here, you can see information specific to website measurement, as well as app measurement. What I want to walk you through is for Universal Analytics, how event measurement took place. Let's go ahead and click into Universal Analytics here. And let's go into the Events section on the left. And here you can see Universal Analytics used a format for events known as action, category, and label. And you can see this is a sample as to how you would structure the syntax for events in Universal Analytics. All right, I'm going to go back. And now on the main developer's website, now let's take a look at GA4. And here, up at the top, you'll see a reference tab, and then an events section on the left. And here are the standard events that you'll find for GA4. And so you can click into any of these to learn a little bit more about the event and the parameters that commonly come with them. So you can see that in Universal Analytics, we had the category action label formatted events, whereas here in GA4, we have the event and parameter syntax. So it's a new syntax that we've enabled for GA4 to enable rich measurement. The best practice when you're trying to translate and migrate from Universal Analytics to GA4 for event measurement is to re-instrument. Whatever events that you were measuring inside of Universal Analytics, take a look at this schema here in the developer website and see what kind of events you might want to be using, and go ahead and instrument your site accordingly. If that's too much work, we do have a shortcut feature that you can use, though it does have some caveats. And for this shortcut feature, so long as you're using a global site tag or the gtag.js library, you can have event forwarding happening where your Universal Analytics category action label formatted events will be forwarded over to your GA4 property. To take advantage of this, let's flip over to Google Analytics here. I've now loaded up my new GA4 property, and I'm in the admin section. And what you want to do here is you want to take a look at your data stream. Let's click on the appropriate web stream. Scroll to the bottom here where you can see some advanced tag settings. Let's click to configure tagging settings. And let's go ahead and show all of the settings. And note this one here, the fourth one down, collect Universal Analytics events. By turning this toggle on, so long as I have the global site tag installed for Universal Analytics, all of the category action label formatted events, as well as some other event information, will be forwarded to the connected Google Analytics 4 property. Now again, this is a shortcut, but it doesn't give you the most power out of Google Analytics 4. So really, that's why the best practice is to re-instrument, where you're going to get the best reporting and the best features and experience from Google Analytics 4. Now let's talk about a very important thing to measure inside of your analytics properties, and that's conversions. Conversions measure some of the most important activities that happen on your website or app. These are important for you so you can monitor the progress and how many people are converting and try to drive more people to convert. In Universal Analytics, we oftentimes used something called goals to measure and define conversions. In Google Analytics 4, we have many events, some of which you can mark as a conversion. To make migrating from Universal Analytics to GA4 easier, inside of the Setup Assistant, we've built a wizard to help you migrate all of your goals over to GA4. To find this, go ahead and log right on in to Google Analytics Admin, click into the Setup Assistant, and let's scroll down to the conversion section. Here, if you follow the caret, you can find an import from Universal Analytics option, which loads up a table here and it looks at all of your goals that you had set up in Universal Analytics and makes it very easy to copy and reconfigure these over in GA4 as conversion events. Simply select the ones that are appropriate for you for copying, and with one click, you're done. What we've now done is we've recreated these events over in GA4 as conversion events. We've also used event editing and creation rules behind the scenes to go ahead and take your page view events and find just the right instances that you're interested in based on your definition from Universal Analytics. We've also copied over event-based goals too, and if you're using the category action label formatted event forwarding over to GA4, we'll copy those definitions over to GA4 for you. Next, let's talk about a powerful advertising feature for Analytics and Google Ads customers. If you're measuring conversions in Google Analytics, you can send those to your linked Google Ads account. Most likely, if you're using this feature, you're using your Universal Analytics conversions in Google Ads. You're going to want to migrate those over to GA4 conversions. So once you've set up your conversions in GA4 through the step that we just walked through, now you can go into Google Ads and import those new GA4 conversions. Once you've done that, you're going to want to wait about 15 days, sometimes a little bit more, to make sure that you have enough conversion volume recording in Google Ads to be able to have a good history base to build upon. Once that's all set, you'll want to take a look and validate that the conversion volumes you're seeing in your GA4 conversion are similar to what you saw in your Universal Analytics property. And then finally, once those look pretty good, you can go ahead and change from your Universal Analytics conversion to your GA4 conversion. The way that you do this is through the action optimization settings in Google Ads. You'll want to set the GA4 conversion to a primary action optimization setting and the Universal Analytics conversion to secondary. We also have a tool that we're building to help out with this whole process. The tool is still in design, it hasn't yet launched, but to show you a preview of what this tool will look like roughly, here is a screenshot or a mock-up of what it should look like. Here, what you're seeing inside of Google Ads is all of the conversions we've imported from Google Analytics, and you can see which ones are linked up. So which ones are where we know that there's a Universal Analytics conversion and a paired GA4 conversion. Then we're also going to show you the conversion volume between the two, so you can quickly and easily see how these are recording, as well as the action optimization settings. And we're going to recommend the right new settings to help you switch from Universal Analytics to GA4. Great, so we hope you'll be able to take advantage of these settings once this feature launches. Next, let's talk about a powerful advertising feature in Google Analytics called Audiences. Audiences are incredibly powerful as they allow you to define a very specific group of customers of yours that are of high value for you. Let's take, for example, shopping cart abandoners. These are very important customers to identify because you can remarket to them later and try to get them to come back and finish up that transaction with you. Through Google Analytics, you're able to define that audience and then send it to Google Ads for advertising. Now, with the migration from Universal Analytics to GA4, you're able to manually recreate these audiences inside of GA4 if you'd like. You're also welcome to go ahead and take a look, and we encourage you to take a look at the powerful new audience capabilities available in Google Analytics 4. For example, we've used machine learning to develop some predictive insights, and it's incredibly powerful for you to take a look at customers who may convert with you in the future, and then go ahead and try to advertise to them. We also have a migration tool for migrating audiences coming soon from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4. As a preview, here's a mock-up of what that tool will look like. It's going to live inside of Google Sheets, and you're going to be able to take a look at all of the audiences that you're running inside of Google Universal Analytics and choose which ones you want to export over to your new Google Analytics 4 property. So stay tuned as that's coming online shortly. Next, let's talk about e-commerce measurement. If you sell products online, measuring the impactfulness of that is very important to you, so you can understand which products are selling well, what's not, and understand how to optimize. This was possible in Universal Analytics and, of course, inside of Google Analytics 4. Now, we've switched the syntax and the schema that this is all based on, so ideally, you're going to want to upgrade from the Universal Analytics schema to GA4. Now, we recognize that can take some time, So we are offering some capabilities to use your existing Universal Analytics tags to help with some basic measurement in GA4. Now, you should think of this just as a stopgap, though, and something to do short-term, as ultimately you're going to want to switch over to the full GA4 syntax, so that way you get the most out of the reporting and the features inside of Google Analytics 4. Here, I've logged back into our developers site, developers.google.com/analytics. And here, if you scroll on down to Google Analytics 4, and then look down on the left, you can see an e-commerce section here. And here you'll find a rich guide for how to implement e-commerce measurement inside of Google Analytics 4. Last but not least, let's talk about users on your new Google Analytics 4 property. If you've been using Universal Analytics for quite a while, you likely have many users on your Universal Analytics property. And you may want to migrate many of them over to your new GA4 property when you're feeling ready. Once you have that new property set up pretty well, and you want to make sure your whole team can collaborate on it, that's when you're going to want to add those users in. You can do this manually through Google Analytics Admin and clicking into the Property Access Management section, where you can see a list of users and add them and manage them. Or if you have many users that you need to copy over from Universal Analytics, we've built a tool to make that easier. Simply load up the Setup Assistant, scroll down to the User section, click on the arrow menu, and the option to import from Universal Analytics. Clicking on that loads up a help article that explains to you how this tool works. This particular tool lives inside of Google Sheets as an add-on. So the first step is we're going to walk you through how to add that extension right on into Google Sheets. And once you have it installed, then you're able to use the tool. And I'll show you what that looks like. Create a new Google Sheet, and then go to the Extensions menu and look for the GA4 Migrator for Google Analytics. Underneath it is the option to migrate users, and let's click on that. From the right, you'll see a menu slide in, and here's where the experience lives. The first step is to select the account you want to pull users from, that is. And here, let's check the All Demos accounts. Next, you have to select the property of interest. In this case, let's pull from the Google Merchandise Store Universal Analytics property. And then the button lights up to import users from that property. And you'll see in just a moment, those users are going to show up right here inside of this Google Sheet. And here they come, along with a status telling you it's complete. Now you want to review this list of users and make sure it's good to go to copy over to your new GA4 property. In some cases, there might be some action required, like the third user here. You can see this user had a mixture of editor and analyst permissions on the different views that are underneath the property that we're trying to migrate from. So in this case, you can either click the checkboxes to resolve it, or if you have a lot of users in your sheet with this issue, we've created a button for making it easy to apply a change. If you're comfortable giving the user the more permissive setting, in other words, editor for this example, you can click this button, and what it'll do is it'll automatically go through and update all the users and give them the more permissive setting. Great. Once this looks good, let's click to continue. And the final step is to pick a GA4 property you want to save these users into. In this case, it'll be our new GA4 Google Merchandise Store property. Click the Migrate button, and you can see a status at the very bottom letting you know about the progress. All right, and a pop-up tells me the operation is complete. All right, so now I can click OK, and I'm all set. These users have now been migrated over from Universal Analytics to the new GA4 property. And again, this is incredibly convenient if you have dozens or even hundreds of users to migrate over. Congratulations! This marks a complete setup for all the basics in a new Google Analytics 4 property. And remember, there are dozens more features that you may choose to want to set up and configure, and you're welcome to go ahead and do that at any point in time. Congratulations! We've now completed the walkthrough of how to set up a Google Analytics 4 property. You've seen how the Setup Assistant can help you through this process. And as a reminder, we have the Help Center that's there at any time if you need support. And if you're on the 360 version of the product, consult your representative with any questions. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Stefano, who's going to walk you through Google Analytics 4 reporting.
Thank you, Matt, for walking us through the setup of a Google Analytics 4 property. My name is Stefano Menti. I'm another product manager on Google Analytics, and today we're gonna talk about the reporting and explore module in the product, and I'm gonna walk you through like 4 core functionalities that we've built into the product. I'm gonna talk about how you're gonna monitor, customize, explore, and activate all your Google Analytics data. With Monitor, we have created a series of pre-made reports that can help you monitor the key metrics of your business. If those reports are not enough or are not customized for your property, you can use the customization layer that we built within GA4 to be able to create your specific set of reports that are more adapted to your specific needs of your company. If you need more than what's available within the default reporting experience, you can explore the data. Through the exploration module, you can slice and dice the data, answering very specific and ad hoc questions. And finally, last but not least, activate your insight, either through better decision-making in the product or by creating audiences that you can share with connected products like Google Ads. Now, let's go deep into each one of these. I'll talk a little bit about each of these functionality, and then we'll move over to a demo. The first one, Monitor. To monitor your business, we have a few different places within GA4 that you can go. The reporting snapshot gives you a summary of all your key reports in one single place, kind of a main dashboard for your product. We then have the real-time module where you can look at the last 30 minutes activity of your user and use that, for instance, when you launch a new campaigns or to look at things like right there that just happened. And then we have the set of collection overview and detail reports that you can look at the default one we have made for you, or you can create your customized version of that left navigation for ease of retrieval of all the important report that you have in your property. And then the last part is a search bar on top of the page where you can just write the report or the question you're trying to ask, and you will have a quick navigation link to those reports or the help center to help you navigate to the most relevant portion of the product. The second portion, customize. If what we have created for you in the default reporting experience is not enough or is not targeted for what your property needs, you can create your own set of reports and organize them in the left navigation for ease of access. Here you can create, organize, and publish. So create the report that you want to use for monitoring, organize them in a series of hierarchical folder, in collection, in topics, and overviews. And finally, once you've created that structure and all those custom reports, you can publish them so everyone in your property has access to that customized version of Google Analytics 4. The next area, Explore. Explore gives you access to a series of techniques, each technique including a specific data model, for instance, funnel or cohort or paths to answer specific business questions. With this technique, you can slice and dice your data and answer all those ad hoc questions that you have for your business. To make life easier for a new user of the Explore module, we have also created a series of templates where instead of starting from scratch, you start from a pre-made report with those techniques that will help you get started and understand the full functionality of the product. And then the last portion here is in Explore, you can start from scratch, or you can start from one of these templates with a net new question. Or if you are navigating through the reporting curriculum and are in a report where you want to dig more into the data, there is a function where you can recreate that report in Explore to be able to further slice and dice the data. And then the last portion is activation. Activation of the insight that you get on GA4 can be done in a couple of ways. So the main ways is through creating audiences and sharing those audiences with the connected product, for instance, Google Ads, where you can create, for instance, an audience of people that have started your e-commerce funnel but have dropped off along the way, and you can remarket to the people that have dropped off through Google Ads. Or more basically, by getting insight on the data, you can make better decision on your business on an ongoing basis. And with that, let's move on the demo and look at how all these things work in the product. And here we are on the Merchandise Store demo account. I'm going to walk through the 4 functionality that I just explained, looking at the product as this demo account. So first of all, monitoring your business. You have by default, when you create a new GA4 properties, you have the reporting section here, and then a left navigation that allows you to walk through and monitor all the key reports that we have created for you. Like the first one is the reporting snapshot. This has a series of the most important report that will give you like the general overview of your property. The next section is the real time, where you can see the last 30 minutes activity on your product. And again, you have some key cards that will tell you, for instance, user by source, user by audience, etc., etc. A series of important cards to see what's happening in real time. And after that, we have, in this case, the default has two collections, the lifecycle collection and the user collection. Each collection is organized in topics. The life cycle has the acquisition topic, engagement topic, monetization and retention. And each topic, if you open it up, will have an overview, which is like a dashboard, as a series of cards that is the summary for that topic. And then one or more detailed report that will go more into the details of aspect for that topic. Within each of these pages, there are a few functionality that you can use to better navigate and better get to the insight you're looking for in your product. We have comparison. By clicking comparison, by default, you have all user, but you can create any kind or many different type of group of users that you can compare alongside the various report. For instance, let's take an example. I want to use audience name as a dimension to define one of my group of user. And let's look at recently active user. I click OK, click Apply, and that applies this. I'll close the panel, and that applies that comparison. And so as I navigate through my reporting experience, every report will compare the all user group and the recently active user group. So you see the two-line chart, the different bar chart, and on the table you see the two group of user and all the metric relevant for each user. And as I go and change page, I move from the detail report to the overview to the acquisition overview. I still have that comparison, and all the relevant card are comparing one group of user to the other group of user. Another, let me remove the comparison. Another feature you can use within the detail report is applying a filter. If you want to look at this report for a subset of the user or a subset of the data that the reports include, you can add a filter. For instance, let's say I want to filter this report for a specific browser. I select browser, select Chrome, apply, and that filters all the data in this report only for the data that is coming from Chrome browsers. Let's remove the filter. If all the list of pre-made report is not enough for what you want to do within your property, you can move on to the library. And here is where you control all the customization for your property. As I mentioned earlier, by default, you get a series of predefined reports, but GA4 gives you the ability to fully customize everything within your reporting module. So all this collection, you can modify, add, or even delete completely what's made by default and create your own. And you do that here in the library. You do that in a few steps. The first thing is that you want to create the report that you want to use for monitoring. And for that, you go to create new report and create the report. Let's just create a simple one to show you how that works. I'm starting from a blank report. You need to add dimension, metric, if you need a filter, and define what type of charts the report should have. So let's choose a simple report. Let's look at campaign for dimension. Let's add default channel grouping, and let's add medium and source as the 4 dimension available for my report. Apply. Now that we've added dimension, let's add the metric. For metric, let's add the revenue, total revenue, and let's add user, and let's add revenue and user. Click apply, and now the report will have the dimension selected with the primary dimension, the one we have selected earlier, and the ability to choose between the dimension that I selected and the 2 metric that I display. We could apply a filter, but let's keep the report simple. Let's add a card. I want to create a report, but also I want to create an overview that has a summary of this report. For creating a card, let's say I want the full chapter node grouping as my main dimension, and the metric, I want to see the user metric. And in terms of visualization, let's do a bar chart report. Let's click apply. And now that I have my card created and my report created, let's hit save, give the report a name. In this case, let's call it test video. Save. Now I've saved this report to this property, but at this point, the report is not yet published. If I go back, I will see this report in the list of the report that I have created for my customization, but I've not yet affected anything in the left navigation that everyone else in the property sees. To do that, I need to take the report I've just created and publish it. To publish it, I need to add it to a collection. So let's create a new collection. Let's, for this example, I don't want to modify the existing collection. I want to create a net new collection. So I click here. I start with a blank collection. And this is my collection. Let's give it a name. Let's use the same name, test video collection. Let's add a topic. As we saw earlier, we can have multiple topics. Let's call it topic 1. And in the topic, I can add an overview and a detailed report. So we just created a detailed report. We haven't yet created an overview though. So let's start with adding the detailed report. The report was called test video. I search for it and I can add the test video here. As I said, I don't have an overview yet, so let me save this partial work, go back to the creation page and create an overview. So I've created a report and now I need to create an overview. The overview is your dashboard where you can put all the cards summarizing the detailed report that you have in a specific collection. So let's add one card. Let's search for the card that we've just created. And the card we've created is the test video card. Select the card, add it, and this is the card with the default channel grouping, user by default channel grouping that we just created a few steps ago. Let me save that, give it an overview test video, save, and now it's been saved. So let's go back to my library page. And I have the test video. This is the detailed report I created earlier. The overview test video. This is the overview I just created. And now I had created a test video collection earlier. Let me edit the collection. I had the test video detailed report already added here. Let me add the test video, the overview test video in the summary. Create save. In this case, because it's an existing collection, I can choose if I want a new one or save to the current one. I'll overwrite the existing one, and this is done. Now I have the collection. It is here. It is structured as I wanted to structure it. Very simple, one card in the overview and one report, but you can add many more for all the things that you're interested. From there, the one step that is left to make the collection going from my personal folder here to being published, I have to publish the collection. So I click the menu here, click publish, and I will make the collection available here with the overview report with a card and a detailed report for everyone in the property to be able to use for monitoring their business. So as you can see here, with this simple example, you can take what we have created as a default for everyone and personalize for your property, adding not just the report that you care more about, but also structuring it in a way that it makes more sense for your company. And now let's look at the Explore. Explore, as I mentioned earlier, is a place where you can slice and dice your data using a series of templates and data model for each specific question that you have. So Explore is the next module after the reporting one. And by default here, you'll have a carousel with all the techniques that are available to you. And down here, the list of all the saved exploration that have already run in the past. So let's look at, for example, at a funnel report. I want to create a funnel. This demo account is an e-commerce account. So a good example could be, let's create a funnel to see the people that have viewed the product, added the product to cart, and then purchase. By default, when you create the technique, it opens up with a template where you can see how the techniques look like. Let's say that you're not really interested on the template. So let me clean the template out and start from a blank sheet of paper. The first thing on a funnel is that you want to create the steps of the funnel. So by adding steps, let's look at the first step. We said the product view. So product view is view item, and that's view item. That's the first step. The second step, let's add to cart. Let's add the condition add to cart. And to make it fast, let's go directly to purchase and not look at the intermediate steps. Otherwise, it's going to take too long to build the funnel. In the preview here, you can see a live preview of how many people are actually making through your whole funnel. Apply. This is a 3-step funnel and will show me the user that have viewed an item, that have added to cart, and then have purchased a product. You can zoom in if, like in this case, there are not many purchases compared to how many are starting the funnel. And the general structure of all techniques, this was an example, but the general structure of all techniques is the first panel here gives you a selection of the date range, a list of segments that you can apply and create new segments to your exploration, a list of dimension and metric that you can use. The second tab is technique specific, and so these will look different for each technique. In the funnel, you'll be able to select the type of visualization for the funnel, the open or close funnel definition, segment that you want to apply to the techniques, the steps, the breakdown if you want to break down each step by a specific dimension, and a few other settings. Once you've created an exploration, for instance, in this case, let's say we have the abandonment rate here, and we see that there are 109 users that are abandoning the funnel from step 2 to step 3. Wouldn't it be nice to create a segment from these abandonments? You right-click on this value, and you can create a segment from the abandonment. This is a general functionality within Explore. You right-click on a group of users, and you can create a segment based on the definition of those users. So in this example, this is the definition of the user that made up that group that you can further customize. This is the starting point, and you can add condition, remove condition to make this segment more like the one that you're interested in if the exact group of users you were clicking is not the complete segment you were looking for. And then from a segment on here, you can click build an audience, and that will turn, if I save and publish here, it will turn this segment into an audience that then you can use on your connected products. And if you have, for instance, this property connected with Google Ads, now you have an audience of users that have started your purchase funnel but dropped off in a specific step, and you can use that for retargeting. So now that we've seen how funnel works, let's take a look at another technique, for instance, cohort. In the same exploration, you can add a new tab and select any of the other technique available. Let's pick cohort exploration. We want to look at view item and add it to cart, and how that changes over time. With the cohort technique, I will do that by selecting view item as the cohort inclusion criteria. That adds to the cohort all the users for each week that have viewed an item. So for instance, between in this time, January 7, this is the beginning of the week, let's look at the second one, January 8 to January 14, there has been 5,718 users that have viewed an item. And now, return criteria, I want to see add to cart. Of people that have done view item, how many have added something to the cart? So of this group of users, in that same week, there have been 61 that have added to cart. Because doing the ratio by hand is not like easy. We can just quickly change per cohort user, so we can look at the percentages and see how that number, the number of users that I've added to cart over the number of users in the cohort, has changed over time. And so here I can see that for a specific step or for any two paths in my event stream, how the user behavior changed over time. On a weekly, I could look at monthly basis, I could change date range, and this way is kind of another way that I can dig deeper into the data and answer my more specific question. And so on and so forth. You can add another tab and select if you have new question, if the insight that you get here helps you come up with more questions to better understand the user behavior in your property. And just to close up the 4 pillars that we talked earlier, the activation part. So here I've dig deeper into my purchase funnel, where user dropped off, and so on and so forth. I can now go back to my funnel exploration and decide that I want to re-engage this user. I can click on the data, create segment from the abandonment. This creates a segment with all the conditions to define that group of user. And by selecting this checkbox, it will turn that segment into an audience and allow me to activate that audience on connected product like Google Ads. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to remind you that this is how you will activate your insight through the audience creation functionality in GA4. And with this, I'll close this section of this educational video. I've shown you how you can use GA4 to monitor your business, to customize and create a property to your specific need and not just what we think your needs are. How you can deep dive into the data and slice and dice the data with all the advanced techniques that we've built and made available. And finally, activate the insight to better decision making or true audiences if you want to activate outside of GA4. And with that, thank you for your time, and hope you enjoy the session.